Greetings and welcome to segment 2 of our Child Youth Worker Protection Policy Training for the Church of God of Prophecy for Christ Fellowship Church, 600 South Pollock Street, Selma. We were looking at definitions as we closed out part 1 of our podcast training. We're going to pick up where we left off with number 7. We were talking about sexual abuse, which is defined as the maltreatment that consists of sexual contact or interactions with a child, including, but not limited to, physical contact, which can involve fondling, genital or oral stimulation, sexual intercourse, and non-physical contact, which would deal with exhibitionism and child prostitution, pornography, and voyeurism. Definition number 8 deals with neglect, the failure or inattention on the part of the caregiver to provide for a child's basic needs such as food, clothing, shelter, medical care, and supervision. Number 9, compensated workers. Compensated workers, hourly, salary, part-time, or full-time employees who work with children at any church-sponsored event or activity. Volunteer workers, any non-compensated individual who works with children at any church-sponsored activity. 11. Caregiver, any compensated or volunteer worker 7th grade or older. This is why a lot of our youth in 7th grade through high school are being included in this training because they are considered as caregivers or volunteers as well. Number 12, mandated reporter. Mandated reporter, any person with responsibility for the care of children is a mandated reporter. If a caregiver has reasonable cause to suspect that a child has been or may be subjected to abuse or neglect, or observes a child being subjected to conditions or circumstances that would reasonably result in abuse or neglect, that person shall immediately report or cause a report to be made to the Department of Children and Family Services or other comparable agency of the civil authorities. Because of the international scope of the ministries of the Church of God of Prophecy, this policy must be implemented through the appropriate general presbyter, who will work in consultation with the state or national overseer. This will call for investigation of the controlling legal authority and the laws of the particular state or union. A good source for this information in the United States would be the Attorney General's office of the particular state or the equivalent authority in the nations. In our case, this would be the state of North Carolina. Special note: there are some states who have passed legislation that has been signed into law requiring the reporting to proper authorities. In most cases, there are specific legal guidelines for the prosecution of those who fail to report, which will often mandate certain fines and incarceration. In addition, there exists a substantial risk of exposure to civil litigation. The following procedures reflect our commitment to provide protective care for all children and caregivers who participate in church-sponsored activities. Number 1, volunteer workers must be regular attendees of the Church of God of Prophecy for at least 6 months. This is being implemented at Christ Fellowship Church of God of Prophecy in Selma, effective immediately. 2, all volunteers and compensated workers must complete the following procedures before participating in any church-sponsored children's activities. A, all volunteer and compensated workers must complete a Church of God of Prophecy child and youth worker application form. References will be checked. B, an interview will be conducted by the pastors and directors of children and youth discipleship ministries. We also recommend that the coordinator for the specific ministry be involved in the interview. That would be, in our case, Pastor Kahinde, Reverend Miller, and any other designee or appointees from children and youth ministries as deemed necessary by the pastoral team. C, all persons working with children must attend orientation training activities appropriate to the level of the volunteer or compensated worker. Applicants must sign a written acknowledgement stating that they have received and reviewed a copy of Church of God of Prophecy Child, Youth, and Worker Protection Policy. 4. All volunteer and compensated workers shall be screened by a background check for the purpose of obtaining information regarding criminal history or abuse findings. This check must include the state sex offenders registry. 5. Any adult member of the congregation, volunteer, or compensated worker who has been convicted of a crime against a child or a violent crime against another adult shall not provide service in any church-sponsored activity or program for children or special needs persons. Those who have been convicted of either sexual or physical abuse can be forgiven for and cleansed of their sin. However, sin does have consequences, and while such persons may serve in certain other areas of ministry, they will be prohibited from serving in the children's and special needs ministries in the Church of God of Prophecy. This application and the results of any screening shall be kept confidential by authorized church staff unless it is required to be released for legal reasons. Children's ministry, birth through 6th grade. Number 1, caregivers shall not engage in any form of physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, or neglect. Number 2, every effort will be made to have a minimum of 2 adults working together with children. In a Bible study or similar teaching environment, it is acceptable to have individual classes, groups with 1 adult caregiver, provided there are other adults present in the general area. This protects the children and the adults as well as provides a safer situation in the event of an accident or emergency. Number 3, the windows of classroom doors shall remain uncovered to allow a clear view of classroom activities. Number 4, when possible, children are to be encouraged to take care of their own bathroom needs. Should assistance be required, another adult or caregiver should be present. Number 5, children must be released to the parent or guardian. Persons other than the child's parents or guardians must be authorized to pick up the child. A positive approach to discipline shall be practiced. Clear, consistent, age-appropriate limits will be established to help the children function appropriately. 7, the pastor and children's ministry directors must approve any activities that are held off-site. Parent or guardian permission shall be obtained, and there shall be a minimum of 2 adult caregivers present. Organized events on site or off site of any Church of God of Prophecy shall be staffed with a minimum ratio of 1 to 10 adult caregiver to child. Overnight events that are attended by children of both genders must be chaperoned by adult caregivers of both genders. Youth Discipleship Ministry, grades 7th through 12th grade. Caregivers. Number 1, caregivers shall not engage in any form of physical, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, or neglect. 2, every effort will be made to have a minimum of 2 adults working together with children or students. In a Bible study or similar teaching environment, it is acceptable to have individual classes or groups with only 1 adult caregiver, provided there are other adults present in the general area. This protects the children and the adults as well, provides a safer situation in the event of an accident or emergency. Number 3, organized events on site or off site shall be staffed with a minimum ratio of 1 to 10, adult caregiver to child. Number 4, the pastor and youth ministries director must approve any activities held off site, and it must be done in writing as well. Number 5, overnight events that are attended by youth of both genders must be chaperoned by adult caregivers of both genders. Number 6, a positive approach to discipline shall be practiced. Clear, consistent, age-appropriate limits shall be established. 7, it is recognized that certain counseling and ministerial situations may preclude the presence of 2 adult caregivers, and that the general guidelines for supervision of caregivers should not restrict situations where individual counsel and guidance is necessary. In this case, the door must be left open, or the window of the door shall remain uncovered. For camps, retreats, or similar activities, 2 adult caregivers shall work as a team when it is not possible to have 2 adults in the same sleeping room. The team approach shall be encouraged and coordinated by the supervisory staff person. The supervisory staff person shall be aware of and responsible for such activities. The Church of God of Prophecy has determined that it is the responsibility of the pastoral staff to report all cases of suspected child abuse or neglect to the proper legal authorities within 24 hours of it being discovered. When it becomes necessary to report suspected child abuse or neglect, the protection of the children must be the most important concern. The state overseer must be notified immediately. As a caregiver, you are a mandated reporter of child abuse or neglect. It is the legal responsibility of a mandated reporter to report all cases of child abuse or neglect he or she observes, and further, to report visible signs of alleged abuse or neglect. Failure to report could lead to liability on the part of the church, the observer, or both. The confidentiality of the pastor-attendee relationship is very important. Reporting probable cause of child abuse or neglect has the potential for helping individuals receive help for a previous problem and may prevent further harm to self and others. What is probable cause? Probable cause means that the available facts, when viewed in the light of the surrounding circumstances, would cause a reasonable person to believe a child was abused or neglected. A report based on probable cause does not require proof that abuse or neglect has actually occurred. Rather, it is a request for an assessment of the condition of the child. Because we believe children are our most important concern, the Church of God of Prophecy has adopted the following guidelines for reporting suspected abuse. Number 1, upon observing or suspecting abuse, the caregiver shall immediately do the following. A. Make sure the child's safety and comfort are secured. B. Make sure the suspected abuser is safely away from the children. 2. Report the abuse or neglect promptly to the pastor or director of children's discipleship ministry and or the director of youth ministries. To preserve confidentiality, it is important to discuss the incident initially only with any of these 4 individuals. The primary function of the Church of God of Prophecy in responding to allegations of sexual abuse or neglect is to attempt to provide pastoral care to all who are affected, attempt to ensure the safety and protection of persons who have been or may be harmed, seek healing by providing pastoral care and other needed assistance to all who are affected, and, to the extent possible, respect the privacy and rights of the parties involved and the confidentiality of communications. If the Church of God of Prophecy receives an allegation of child abuse or neglect, the pastors will respond with the utmost concern for the victim, parent, or other party making such an allegation. The primary function of the Church of God of Prophecy in responding to allegations of sexual abuse or neglect is to attempt to provide pastoral care to all who are affected, attempt to ensure the safety and protection of persons who have been or may be harmed, seek healing by providing pastoral care and other needed assistance to all who are affected, and, to the extent possible, respect the privacy and rights of the parties involved and the confidentiality of communications. If the Church of God of Prophecy receives an allegation of child abuse or neglect, the pastors will respond with the utmost concern to the victim, parent, or other party making such an allegation. The accused will be treated with dignity and support. Without clear and convincing evidence to the contrary, Church of God of Prophecy will assume that such complaints are made in good faith. Persons making such complaints should have no doubt that the Church of God of Prophecy takes them seriously and will take appropriate action. If an alleged abuser contacts church officials about a complaint, the Church of God of Prophecy personnel may confirm that they have received such a complaint, only if they are certain the alleged abuser already knows this. They should avoid discussing the allegations or making any further comments until the proper authorities have an opportunity to conduct their investigation. They should not identify the alleged victim or complainant during an investigation. If the media or other parties contact a church official about a pending allegation of child abuse, they should be referred to the pastor. Only the pastor or his or her designee shall make comments about the allegation.